Hello everyone, welcome back to the M2. I thought I'd give you a bit of a garage update. Also talk about the M2 competition, because I have an M2 and I currently have a deposit on an M2 competition. But I'm gonna sort of discuss my thoughts on that maybe, and then explain what's going on with all the other cars and things like that. I've now had the M2 for a year-ish. I haven't done that many miles on it. I've done 7,000 miles. I drive it most days, but just in London, so it doesn't really put up that many miles. But I have done quite a few track days in it. I've been to Spa, I've been to Bedford quite a few times, had some really good days. Met some fun M135i and 235i owners. Learn how to deal with the car.
That's what I like.
You can still. And we just generally had a good time. So it seems to be every time I go there, there's a little BMW crew, and we kind of have a little play around, and they have a go in the M2 and that sort of thing, and we sort of see the difference. But it's been a really good car for that, for me. I'm on the original set of tyres, which is, I'm slightly amazed. I think I've done 6 track days. You might say, okay, you're not driving it that hard. I've been through a set of brake pads, which I changed brake pads quite early on because the stock setup was rubbish. So I did pads and brake lines and stuff like that, and fluid. And I put on some Ferrodos, but I didn't go for a super aggressive kind of proper full-on track pad, as I didn't want squeaking in the day-to-day because that would do my head in. But it's been a really fun car to drive on track, and it's pretty much fitted all my needs that I can think of. Like, it hasn't cost very much. I've been pretty careful with tyres. I've let them get hot, but I go out, sort of do a warm-up lap, do a couple of fast laps, and then come, a cool-down lap and come in. And I think that seems to have preserved the tyres pretty well. They're pretty worn on the sides and stuff like that, but just tread-wise, they're doing pretty well and not just completely overcooking them. So it's been great. I've loved it. The M2 competition. What is the M2 competition? Well, there seem to be, you can look up the specs, but there seems to be a few things that stand out. It's different engines, so it's the S55 engine, which is the same engine in the M3 and the M4, but it will be in a detuned state. Does that then mean you can then just put a little ECU flash and have all the benefits, all the power from the M4? I think it's got slightly smaller, some fundamentally different things in it, but that, you wouldn't be surprised if you can get big power out of that pretty easily. But in my driving of this car, if you're just trying to be a bit of a yob around, you have to be kind of on it to get the back end out. It doesn't have enough power just to just burn rubber all the time. You've got to be quite aggressive, and I think if you had a manual, you could do clutch kick and things like that, but you can't. It doesn't have enough power to just be a yob. So if you're after that side of it, the additional power, I think it goes up to 410 horsepower and a bit more torque, but it's not a big difference. And on track, I would say the car's very, very balanced. As an all-round package, it's got a decent, the grip at all the front and the rear is pretty even, pretty much takes most of the power most of the time. So if you want to slide it, you've actually got to drive better. So initially, when I first got the car, I was a bit annoyed that it didn't have this sort of power that I thought it was going to have. But actually, what it's done is it's made me a better driver. And you have to, if you want to slide the rear coming out of a corner on track, you've got to get the car on the limit before then. You can't just power it out, which I've enjoyed that learning process of getting better. And it's made me a bit better of a driver, and I've just had a lot of fun. I've had so much fun with this car. I think most of the changes, there's a lot of cosmetic changes for the competition. Like, you can get different interior, like seats and things like that. and there's some really cool bits you can have on the exterior. You can have a carbon fiber roof, proper carbon fiber wing mirrors, all those sorts of things that just would look really cool and probably make it feel a bit more from the outside like an M car, but it looks pretty great already. My one problem I've had with this car has been the suspension. The suspension is a bit jittery, and it's on track, it works perfectly, but tracks are pretty much perfectly smooth, so you don't really notice it. You can go really stiff, but just going down a country lane, it's quite punishing almost. Like you just get jiggled around too much, and it's something I've actually considered looking at from the aftermarket side. And I went to visit a well-known company actually in the UK who do a suspension setup for the M2, and I drove their car and it was miles better. You know, the difference, I drove their car first and actually was like, I don't know, didn't seem that special or anything. And then I took my car back down the same road, and their car was lowered a little bit, which cosmetically looks a bit nicer, was spaced, but just the damping was so much nicer that you just I didn't think the road was that bumpy, and then I went round in this car and it was horrific. It was awful. So that's something I've thought about, and as much as I can tell from the competition, that's not necessarily been changed, which would mean upgrading to a more expensive car, and the main problem I have with this car potentially not being solved. You could flip side that and say if I did something to the suspension on this, it 100% would bolt onto the competition. But we don't know what the pricing of the new car is going to be. It's probably going to be getting on towards probably £60,000, something like that. And the M2 now seems to be it's dropped quite a lot, and that means you can get an M2, you can get it for like 35. So you're almost to change cars, other than the fact that you've got a different car, blah 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 blah. Most of the stuff is pretty similar. I think the S55 engine doesn't sound very good. I don't like it at all, and it just may not be that much of an upgrade. Now, I haven't driven the car and I haven't got the full pricing yet, so I can't really comment on that car. But for my usage of the car, I've already taken a bit of a hit on this one in my ownership in terms of price, and I probably will continue using it for the same sorts of things. So day to day, just driving around, whatever, a couple of track days a year, have a little bit of hoon about. It fulfills that really well, and for the incremental potential performance gains and stuff like that changing, I don't think it's going to be worth the money. I haven't had all the full information pack on the competition yet in pricing and blah 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 blah, but I think I'll probably take my deposit back, and obviously if I can drive the car and it's mega, then we'll think about it. But I think probably what I will end up doing is, if I still like the idea of having an M2 in a year's time, or a bit more than a year's time, I'll look at the second-hand market, because I don't think there's any particularly standout things that would make me change, like just sick colours or something like that. It's all pretty similar to this car. Moving on to the other cars, F40. I always get asked, Sam, when are you getting the F40 out? And the answer is I do actually get it out every now and then, but because it doesn't live in London and it lives in the middle of nowhere, I get it out, take it for a drive, have a blast around, have a lot of fun, and then put it back in the garage, and no one knows about it. Well, obviously I knew about it, but I don't necessarily shout about it on social media all the time, so it does get driven. It's never in London. Sorry for the people that want to see it. It's never in London, and mainly the reason it's not in London is it's not a car for driving around London. I don't particularly like driving it around London. It's a fun car to drive. It's awesome, but it's not a car for sitting in traffic, and I try not to annoy people. And the other day, it came into London to have a service and that sort of stuff. I took it back to my house. In the process of taking it back to my house, I had to drive through sort of Kensington and Chelsea, and which they have this PSPO, basically kind of like ASBO order thing. If someone thinks you're being overly loud, etc., etc., they can send in your plate details, and the council will send you a £100 fine. There's no other evidence required other than someone has looked up your plate and sent it in. So if I won't appreciate if I get a bunch more now, because the car is not in London. So I drove it around for one afternoon. I literally drove it from where it was being serviced to my house, and I got a £100 fine for being too loud. And I promise you, I was not revving it or anything. I was just driving around, and it's quite loud. So sorry for the person that I annoyed in that process, but that's why the car's never in London, because every time I take it out, I get stopped by the police because it's too loud. When you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no one around, it sounds phenomenal. It sounds phenomenal, and obviously it's fun to drive. Porsches now, I guess. GT3 RS. The GT3 RS, I haven't actually driven that much recently. I've been driving other things, and I've just been travelling and been around and haven't had much chance to drive it, but I'm going to try and drive it some more. At the end of last year, I went on a road trip with a couple of other people, and it just so happened we ended up being in a bunch of GT3s. We had two 997 Gen 2 GT3 RSs and a 991 GT3 and a 991 GT3 RS. All the cars had Sharkwork exhaust, which was pretty funny, and they all sound mega. I realised how much I love those cars. Driving around in a sort of squad of them, we went to Wales, had a hoon about. I lost a front splitter, so it just sort of finally gave up going over some sort of train line thing. So that had to go back. In the process of all that, I filled up my car, parked it in the garage, and then about an hour later the garage was full of petrol. Literally, it had just dumped, I don't know, 5 litres of fuel on the floor or something, and turns out I had a fuel leak. So the car's been back, it's had a new fuel tank, it's had the new front splitter, it's had the warranty extended, all that sort of stuff. It's backed, ready to go now. In the process of getting the warranty work done, I had to put the stock exhaust back on, which was an interesting kind of revelation, really. I forgot what it sounded like stock, and honestly, I don't like that car stock. I think a large part of it is the valve system. So as the stock set up, the valves only open when you're really on it, and as soon as you lift off, they shut. So all the good noises you only get when you're on it, and it makes you drive faster than you need to, and it just doesn't sound as good. So you can pull the valve, it's like an electrical valve controller unit in the back. It's really easy to do, and that has the valve open all the time. Car sounds significantly better. I have a little controller that goes back on, so that's getting back on. And the exhaust I'll probably get done pretty soon. I've been talking to a company called, heard of this suspensions controller by, I think it's a DSC Sport, and you can Google it and see what it's about. But I'm probably going to go and get this fitted. And basically, the car has an active suspension, it is active, but it's in a passive setup. And the controller for that is, when the car came out in 2010, it has a 2010 controller. Basically, this company has redone all that electrics to use all the electronics and sensors that are in the car already, and you can buy a new controller for that. I think it's about £900, and apparently it completely transforms how the suspension works, reacts, everything, using all the G sensors and stuff. And from what I can gather, it's a phenomenal increase or improvement in the suspension. Like it's then softer in daily usage or just normal usage, and then as soon as you start driving faster, it's more reactive and it works. It's just meant to work really well. So I'm going to look at that, and then whilst I'm there, I'll probably get the exhaust put back on. The backdate, I love that thing. It's been to Norway in the snow, Sweden in the snow. I've done the North Coast 500 in it. There's a video on that, and I just enjoy spending a lot of time with that car. And part of it definitely, even just when I've got it in London, is the fact that everybody likes it, and it's a really positive thing when you get a reaction like that when you're driving around. Like, it gets a really positive reaction from everyone else. So you're driving around. I love driving that car. It's just fun. It's kind of cool. It's old. It's bright yellow, and everyone I come across, it just has a smile on their face, and they love it. Which, you drive some cars around, and you get some serious hatred. I was having a conversation with some friends yesterday actually about red cars, and whether if you drive a red car, whether you get more hate. And I think it's possible. Like, if you had a red Ferrari versus a black Ferrari or something, you would have a different interaction with people, because red is seen as an loud, obnoxious colour. But the plans for that car, still going to drive it lots. I'd love to get it on track. I was at Spa 2 weeks ago taking some photos with the Global Endurance Legends, which is like a 90s and 2000s Le Mans cars. They had this new 2-litre cup. A bunch of old Porsches ragging around. Just looked so much fun, and it made me. And you look at all the onboards and they're sideways all the time and stuff like that. So it really made me want to get the backdate back on track. And at the moment, I think it's a bit loud, or it's a bit loud for somewhere like Bedford, which is just quite a good place to go and play with a car, because you know there's loads of runoff, and the consequences of messing up aren't very high. Whereas if you go to somewhere like Silverstone, or Silverstone's not that bad, but you don't want to go in gravel traps. They don't do your car very much good, all that sort of thing. So what I might do is either try and get a slightly quieter exhaust, or you can get some sort of silencer add-ons that slot into your current exhaust. The Radical has one when we need it to be quieter, and that may allow me to take the car and then just have a bit of a hoon around, which I really, really want to drive that car fast in somewhere where there's a bit of space and it's not dangerous. So that's hopefully on the cards. The Radical, my SR3, I haven't driven it very much. I think I've driven it once this year. I may not even have driven it once this year yet. I think I've been once. What am I doing racing wise? Well, they've changed the series a little bit. So rather than, it used to be all the racing on the Saturday, so you turn up, you do your Friday testing, or some people don't even do that, and then 3 races on Saturday. Qualifying and 3 races, 2 20-minute sprints and a 45-minute endurance race. And they've changed it so that it's split over 2 days, so you have 2 on one day and then 1 on the other. And it's put the cost up of the weekend, and it's put the time up for the weekend. So I don't want to spend. I love racing, I love cars, but the same amount of racing over more days isn't more fun. It's just a time sap, and it's significantly more money to do it like that. And I just don't want to spend the entire weekend at some of these tracks, for example. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I'm probably going to do 1 or 2 races this year. I'm going to try and get out testing. I love driving the car, but it's just got more expensive, and I don't really know what to do with that. If anyone is interested in some sponsorship, give me a call and see what we can do. The videos get some views, so it might be worth it for someone. I think you can come down to the track, hang out with us, all that. Let me know. Any new cars? I do not have my name down on any cars at the moment. M2 competition, but I'm probably going to cancel that. So nothing really. I don't actually change my cars that often, and it's not because I don't want to or anything, but it's changing cars can be quite expensive. And also, if you like your car, why change it? I think some people, and maybe some YouTubers, change their car a lot just for the sake of creating new content, and fair enough, it works, but I'm not particularly interested in changing my car all the time, and it does cost quite a lot to do it, and especially if you want to drive your cars and things like that, like, it doesn't make much sense. I did try and get a Gen 2 GT3. I wanted a manual one, and I asked. I didn't get an allocation, and I tried. I asked a few places. I bought a few Porsches. Still got my GT3 RS, and I thought I would probably change the GT3 RS for the new GT3. But actually, since I didn't get an allocation, and I'm not paying £190,000 for a GT3, it's not. I don't see that really where the value is in that car. Well, not for me anyway. I have actually started to enjoy the GT3 RS a bit more. Not enjoy it more. I've loved that car. I've had it for 4 years. I love it. And if you see anyone that hangs out with me a lot, they kind of associate that as the car that it's me. But things change, and I think what my attitude has changed to, if that car, maybe I'm going to keep it forever. Maybe I won't ever change it. It's not I don't particularly plan on having a collection of cars. I don't buy cars just to collect them. I buy cars because I love the car and I like driving it. And if there's something better that offers more of whatever I'm looking for in that car, then I'm very happy to change. Now, I thought that maybe the GT3, you get all the benefits of having a newer car, all the day-to-day stuff, like your sound system's better, bigger engine. I had slight problems with the GT3 RS. Not a problem, but I feel like it doesn't have enough low-down torque when you're driving on an alpine road, and I do a lot of miles in that car on proper road trip type stuff, and it's either got too much grip or you've got to be really, really, really on it, and that makes things a bit more sketchy. So I like the concept of the new GT3, but I think what I will probably end up doing is slightly changing my RS to get rid of the issues that I have, or the small issues that I have with it. One, sound system doesn't go loud enough. Now, there will be a whole bunch of people that bang on about sound systems saying, oh, yeah, like, you should be listening to the engine, yada, yada, yada. Go and drive 3,000 miles in a week and tell me that it doesn't get boring after a while. And basically, the sound system doesn't go loud enough. You can't, with my car set up as it is, you can't get it quite loud enough when you're just cruising on the motorway to where you would want it. So what I might do is to replace the speakers in the door, and just for a slightly higher spec, better system, for not very much money and not change anything else, just to get a bit more output. And that's that. And then I had an idea. So obviously, as I spoke about earlier, the suspension module upgrade, but also I thought, well, I remember watching a Chris Harris video a while back where he put a C63 on Space Savers. That was a great video. And I thought, hang on a minute, I've got the Pilot Sport Cup 2s on my GT3 RS, which are a bit more grippy and way better in the wet than the original Cups which it came on. And actually, what I want is less grip. I think that may solve the problems, or help with the problems, that it's just got too much grip. So maybe if I put it on some Pilot Super Sports, something like that, slightly narrow. I think they have to be slightly narrower, because I don't think you can get them quite as big, and that will give me a bit less grip, a bit more wet weather grip, and I'll drive this car in all sorts of conditions, and that may provide a bit more entertainment, and then just enjoy the car. I love it. It's so good. So I hope you found that somewhat interesting, and we shall see what the future holds. But if I can get a go in an M2 competition, I'd love to. BMW, please. Thank you. And catch you in the next video.